cold terminal lights hummed above frozen concrete as a 62-year-old man was slammed face-first to the ground. He was not a criminal. He was a United States federal judge, waiting quietly for his wife. He said nothing about who he was. He simply let the night unfold. Above him, hidden in the ceiling, a 4K government camera recorded every second of the officer's fatal mistake. This is a story of arrogance, abuse of power, and a justice no badge could ever outrun. American Airlines Flight 142 landed at Chicago O'Hare at 10:45 p.m. outside, the wind cut at 32 bitter degrees. Inside first class, Noah Pendleton unbuckled his seatbelt slowly. He was 62, a United States District Judge for the Northern District of Illinois, appointed over a decade ago. 2 exhausting weeks in Washington had drained him. Tonight he wore no black robe, only a faded navy peacoat, a gray cashmere sweater, dark jeans, and worn leather loafers. Without his gavel, he was simply an older black man with silver at his temples, carrying a battered briefcase full of federal documents. He moved through the quiet terminal with practiced ease, skipped baggage claim, and headed for the curb. His wife Martha had texted. Traffic was bad. She'd be 10 minutes late. Wait inside. Noah replied with a thumbs up, then pushed through the revolving doors anyway, craving cold air after 2 hours of recycled cabin oxygen. The curb was nearly empty. He set his briefcase down, exhaled a plume of white breath, and closed his eyes, thinking of his Monday docket of the tea Martha would have waiting. He never noticed the 2 officers rounding Pillar 4B. Officer Darius Miller, 28, built like a linebacker, wore his badge like a weapon. Beside him walked rookie Brian Hayes, 6 months out of the academy, trained only to stay silent and follow. Miller's eyes locked on Noah. He didn't see a judge. He saw an older black man standing calm, unbothered, outside the marked pickup zone, and to Miller, that calm was an insult demanding correction. "Look at this guy," Miller muttered. "Thinks he owns the terminal." "Hey, buddy." The voice cut through the cold, sharp, and uninvited. Noah looked up from his phone, where he'd been mid-reply to his daughter, Rachel, who had texted to ask if he'd landed safely. Officer Miller stood barely 3 feet away, thumbs hooked aggressively in his tactical vest, jaw set, eyes narrow with the particular boredom of a late shift looking for something to break the monotony. Hayes hovered a few paces back, hands resting uneasily on his belt, already reading the tension in his partner's shoulders. "Can I help you, officers?" Noah asked, his voice deep and level. The same calm voice that had settled arguments between the nation's top litigators for years, the voice that had never once needed to be raised to command a room. "You deaf or just ignorant?" Miller snapped. "You can't stand here. Active loading zone, move it along." Noah glanced around. The curb was empty for 50 feet in every direction. "I'm waiting for my wife," he said. "She's pulling up in a few minutes. I'm not obstructing anything. I didn't ask for your life story." Miller stepped closer, invading his space, breath sour with stale coffee and cheap cologne. "Pick up your bag and get inside, or I'm writing you a citation." Noah had lived 6 decades as a black man in America. He knew this script by heart, had watched it play out in courtrooms 1,000 times over, men and women describing exactly this tone, exactly this posture, exactly this manufactured grievance. He knew the sidewalk was public property. He knew he'd broken no ordinance. He knew Miller's order was arbitrary, born of nothing but ego and the particular thrill of watching someone flinch. Noah did not flinch. He looked the officer dead in the eye, unblinking, unbothered by the cold or the closeness or the badge. "Officer, I am well within my rights to stand on this curb. I am not moving." Hayes shifted uncomfortably, sensing the air change. Miller's face flushed deep red. No one defied him out here. "All right," Miller barked, hand dropping to his flashlight. "Let's see some ID. Right now." Noah recognized it instantly. A Terry stop with no reasonable suspicion, a textbook Fourth Amendment violation. "On what grounds are you demanding my identification? Am I suspected of a crime?" "You're suspected of failing to comply with a lawful order." Miller shot back, stepping so close his boot nearly touched Noah's loafer. "Show me your ID or I'm placing you under arrest for obstruction." Noah took a slow breath, the cold air burning faintly in his lungs. He had a choice. And he knew it clearly, the way he knew every fork in every case that had ever crossed his bench. He could say the words that would end this instantly. "I am the Honorable Noah Pendleton, United States District Judge." Miller would pale, stammer, and slink away, and this would become nothing more than an unpleasant memory to mention over dinner. But a cold, righteous anger coiled in his chest, quiet and unwavering. If he hid behind his title tonight, what would happen tomorrow to the man without a federal badge in his coat pocket? To the tired factory worker walking home late, the young college student waiting for a bus, the exhausted nurse coming off a double shift, anyone who happened to cross paths with Darius Miller on a night like this one, with no title, no power, no protection at all, Noah decided, in that single instant, to let the officer walk the path he was so eager, so hungry to take. "My identification is in my wallet, in the interior pocket of my coat," Noah said clearly, hands visible at his sides. "I am going to reach for it now." It was textbook de-escalation. But Miller wasn't looking for compliance, he wanted submission, and Noah's calm dignity only fed his rage. "Don't reach for anything," Miller shouted, loud enough that heads turned down the curb. A young mother, Sarah Jenkins, instinctively pulled her toddler behind a concrete barrier. Noah froze, hand halfway to his lapel. "You asked for my ID, officer. I'm attempting to provide it." "I said keep your hands where I can see them." Miller unclipped his handcuffs, the metallic click sharp in the freezing air. "Turn around, hands on the pillar. You're being detained." "Detained for what?" Noah's voice finally rose enough to carry. "You have no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion. This is an unlawful detention." The precise legal language only enraged Miller further. He hated men who thought they knew the law better than the badge. "I'll give you probable cause," Miller hissed and lunged. He seized the wool collar of Noah's peacoat and yanked the 62-year-old man forward, off balance. Noah stumbled, his briefcase toppled, spilling manila folders across the wet pavement. "What are you doing?" Noah shouted, shock finally breaking his composure as pain flared through his shoulder. "Stop resisting. Hayes, get his other arm." Miller bellowed, manufacturing a struggle from nothing. Hayes rushed forward, panicked, and grabbed Noah's left wrist. "I am not resisting," Noah said, planting his feet. "I am a senior citizen. I am unarmed. You are assaulting me." Down the curb, Sarah Jenkins had seen enough. With shaking fingers, she raised her phone and hit record. "Leave him alone," she called out. "He wasn't doing anything." "Back off, lady. Police business," Hayes yelled, his voice cracking. Miller twisted Noah's right arm behind his back with vicious, unnecessary force. Pain tore through his shoulder. His knees buckled. "Officer." Noah gritted through clenched teeth, his cheek inches from the freezing pillar, sweat beading despite the cold. "You are making a profound, career-ending error. I strongly advise you to release my arm." Miller laughed, ugly and short, delighted by the pain he was causing. "Oh yeah? You're going to sue me, old man? Call my captain? Write a strongly worded letter? I am the law out here and nobody tells me different." With one brutal, sweeping motion of his heavy boot, Miller kicked Noah's legs out from under him. The descent was violent and fast, gravity taking hold before Noah could brace himself, his body twisting helplessly toward the unforgiving ground. Noah Pendleton, a man who had dined with presidents, who had authored legal opinions taught in law schools nationwide, who had spent 30 years believing fundamentally in the machinery of justice, slammed hard onto the salt-covered concrete of Terminal 3. The impact drove the breath from his lungs in one violent expulsion. His wire-rimmed glasses flew off, skittering across the pavement and cracking against the curb, taking with them the last clear image he would have of the night. His cheek scraped against the ice, breaking the skin, drawing a hot line of blood that ran warm against the freezing air. He lay there for a second, ears ringing, vision swimming, the cold seeping instantly through his cashmere sweater and into his bones. He had read thousands of police reports describing excessive force in the flat, clinical language of legal filings. He had presided over civil rights trials where plaintiffs wept on the stand, describing the terror of a body pinned beneath another's weight, powerless. He had always listened with sympathy, with understanding, with the practiced compassion of a man who believed he grasped the gravity of what they'd endured. But understanding it on paper, in the safety of a raised bench, and feeling a stranger's knee grind into his own spine were two entirely different universes. And Noah understood that now, completely. For the first time in his 62 years, Miller drove his knee deeper into Noah's back. "Give me your hands! Stop fighting!" he screamed, fully committed now to a performance of danger that existed only in his own mind. "I am yielding," Noah gasped, forcing his arm behind his back, refusing to give the officers any excuse to escalate further. The handcuffs bit into his wrists, ratcheted too tight, cutting off circulation instantly. Miller wrenched the chain upward, hyperextending his shoulders, forcing a groan of pure agony from the judge's lips. "Got him," Miller panted, hauling Noah to his feet with no regard for his joints. Noah's head swam. He tasted copper. Without his glasses, the world blurred into smeared headlights and neon. Blood trickled warm down his cheek, pooling at his jaw. "Get his bag, Hayes," Miller ordered, shoving Noah toward the idling cruiser 30 yards down the lane. As he was frog-marched forward, Noah's legal mind sliced through the fog of pain. He didn't curse. He didn't scream. His unfocused eyes scanned everything, the time, the badge numbers, the position of every witness, and then he saw it. Mounted high on the terminal awning above Pillar 4B, nearly invisible against the white ceiling panels, a sleek black dome camera. Noah knew O'Hare's security architecture intimately. He had signed the federal warrant authorizing this exact surveillance overhaul 3 years earlier, back when it was a matter of dry legal review, a stack of paperwork on his desk between more pressing cases. That was no ordinary closed-circuit unit, the kind that recorded grainy loops onto a local hard drive and was overwritten within a week. It was a 4K, audio-enabled Department of Homeland Security camera, equipped with low-light sensors sensitive enough to read a license plate in total darkness. A tiny red light blinked steadily on its rim, patient and indifferent. Its recording, Noah realized, a cold, calculating calm settling over his battered body like a second skin. It sees everything. It has always seen everything. Miller shoved him into the back of the cruiser. Noah struck his head on the doorframe, hard enough to make even Hayes wince. Before Miller slammed the door, caging him inside. Outside, Hayes scooped up the spilled documents. One folder bore the unmistakable gold seal of the United States federal judiciary. "Hey, Miller," he said, voice trembling. "This guy's paperwork looks weird. Throw it in the trunk." Miller snapped, adrenaline still surging. "It's garbage. Let's book him. Resisting arrest. Assault on an officer, obstruction." Hayes tossed the priceless documents into the trunk beside Noah's briefcase and climbed into the passenger seat, hands shaking. Miller glanced in the rearview mirror. Noah sat perfectly upright despite the cuffs, staring straight back, blood stark against his dark skin. "You're awfully quiet back there, tough guy," Miller mocked, tires screeching from the curb. "Let's see how arrogant you are in a holding cell with real criminals." Noah didn't blink. "Officer Miller," he said softly, his voice cutting through the engine's hum, "enjoy this drive. It is unequivocally the last time you will ever wear that uniform." Miller scoffed and turned up the police radio. He'd heard threats like this 1,000 times. Nothing ever happened to Darius Miller. Back at Terminal 3, a silver sedan pulled up to the curb. Martha Pendleton rolled down her window, phone in hand, wondering why her husband wasn't waiting in his usual spot. Above her, unseen, the black dome camera kept its silent vigil, holding the key to a storm that would soon bring an entire police department to its knees. The 16th District Precinct was exactly what Noah had expected, a stark, graceless contrast to the polished mahogany and hushed reverence of his own federal courtroom. The air smelled of stale coffee, industrial floor wax, and old sweat, phones ringing in a chaotic, tired symphony of municipal dysfunction. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead, harsh and unflattering, throwing everything into a flat, sickly light. Miller hauled Noah through the double doors, grip still viciously tight on his bicep. Noah's shoulder was numb from the hyperextended angle of the cuffs, the blood on his cheek dried to a dark, stiff crust, but his posture remained unbroken. He walked with his head held high, his sweeping gaze cataloging every exit, Every officer, every detail, the way he had trained himself to do decades ago in a courtroom, where nothing could be allowed to slip past unnoticed. Desk Sergeant Thomas Alley, a 20-year veteran who had seen every form of human folly and misery slide across his counter, looked up from a stack of arrest reports as Miller shoved Noah toward the booking desk. His eyes, weary from a long shift, took in the sight of a bleeding older man in an expensive, if now filthy, cashmere sweater, and something in his gut tightened. "What do we have?" Alley asked, reaching for a fresh booking sheet. Assault on an officer, resisting arrest, obstruction, failure to comply with a lawful order. Miller recited loudly, puffing out his chest, making sure the 3 other officers scattered around the bullpen heard his tally. He slammed a hand on Noah's shoulder, forcing him to stand squarely in front of the glass. This guy thought he could do whatever he wanted at Terminal 3. Got real combative when I asked for ID. Alley sighed, picking up his pen. "All right, name." Noah remained perfectly silent, looking directly at Alley, his expression impassive, exercising the right he had spent his career defending for other men. "Hey, the sergeant asked you a question." Miller barked, rattling the cuff chain. "Give him your name." "He doesn't have to say a word to you, Miller," Alley corrected tiredly, recognizing a suspect invoking silence when he saw one. He looked past Miller to the pale, trembling rookie standing near the door. "Hayes, you got his wallet?" "Yes, Sarge." Hayes stepped forward, boots feeling like lead, and pulled Noah's sleek black leather wallet from his tactical pocket, sliding it under the gap in the security glass. "Let's see who our tough guy is," Miller sneered, leaning against the counter, still riding the high of his own imagined heroism. Alley flipped it open, expecting a standard Illinois driver's license. Instead, his eyes fell on a heavy gold-embossed badge pinned beside a heavily watermarked federal identification card. The seal belonged to the United States judiciary. His gaze shifted to the photograph, the same face currently bleeding in front of him. Noah William Pendleton, United States District Judge, Northern District of Illinois. Authorized signature, Chief Justice of the United States. For 3 full seconds, the precinct fell into absolute silence. The color drained from Alley's face. His eyes rose slowly to meet Noah's steady gaze. Noah gave a small, fractional nod. "Yes, you're reading it correctly. What's his name?" "Sarge," Miller asked, still oblivious to the tectonic shift in the room. "Miller," Alley said, voice shaking as he held up the wallet. "Take the cuffs off him, right now." Miller frowned, confused. "What? He's combative." "Sarge, he assaulted me. He stays in the iron till he's in a cell. I am giving you a direct supervisory order," Alley roared, rocketing out of his chair, spittle hitting the glass. The bullpen froze. Officers spun around, hands drifting toward their belts. "Take the goddamn cuffs off him, Miller. Do it before you put us all in federal prison." Miller blinked, completely derailed. He reached for his keys, stepping behind Noah. "Stop," Noah commanded. The first word he'd spoken since the cruiser. It wasn't a shout. It was the deep baritone of a man who had silenced entire courtrooms with a single syllable. "You will not remove these handcuffs, Officer Miller. You placed them on me under color of law, claiming probable cause. They remain exactly where they are until my legal counsel and your precinct captain arrive to document my unlawful detention and the injuries you've inflicted." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Miller snapped, ego thrashing against the confusion. Alley burst through the security door, ignoring Miller entirely, and rushed to Noah's side. "Your Honor," he breathed, staring at the blood crusting on Noah's face and the awkward angle of his arms. "Your Honor, please, let me take them off. We need a paramedic. This is a catastrophic misunderstanding." The words "Your Honor" hit the room like a live grenade. Miller's stomach dropped. The sneer vanished from his face, replaced by sickening pallor. What did you call him? Shut your mouth, Miller." Alley barked, spinning around. "Shut your mouth and step back. You just assaulted a federal judge, you absolute idiot." Hayes let out a small, terrified sound and slumped against the wall, face in his hands. "Sergeant," Noah said, voice slicing through the rising panic. "My wife is waiting for me at Terminal 3. Her name is Martha Pendleton. You will allow me to call her immediately." Then you will wake Captain Robert Mitchell and tell him he has 20 minutes to reach this precinct before I have the United States Marshals descend on this building." Ali swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. "Yes, yes, Your Honor, right away." Captain Robert Mitchell lived in a comfortable suburb 40 minutes from the 16th District. He made the drive in 22, sirens blaring the entire way, his heart hammering its way toward his throat. He burst through the precinct doors, uniform shirt untucked, gasping for air. The bullpen was deathly quiet. No one was speaking. At its center, sitting on a hard plastic chair, was Judge Noah Pendleton, still in handcuffs, the blood on his face a glaring indictment of the uniform Mitchell wore. In the corner, Officer Darius Miller sat at a desk, head in his hands, knee bouncing aggressively, the reality of his situation finally crushing his ego flat. He wasn't just fired anymore. He was looking at federal prison. Mitchell approached with forced, placating warmth. "Judge Pendleton, I am Captain Mitchell. I cannot express how deeply, profoundly sorry I am. This is an egregious violation of protocol. Let's get you out of those cuffs, into my office. I have a medic standing by." Noah looked up, his eyes cold and utterly without mercy. "I am not going anywhere with you, Captain. I have already stated these cuffs remain until my counsel arrives. Your officer claimed I was a violent threat. We wouldn't want me to assault you, would we?" Mitchell flinched, turning a furious glare on Miller. "Your Honor, please. We can handle this internally. I'll take Officer Miller's badge tonight. He'll be suspended pending termination. I'll ensure every charge against you is expunged. It will be as if this never happened." "Do not insult my intelligence," Noah said, leaning forward despite the metal biting his raw wrists. "This will not be handled internally. You do not assault a citizen on public property, fabricate felony charges to cover your tracks, and then bury it once you realize you've arrested someone with the power to end you." "I am not looking for an apology, Captain. I am looking for an indictment." Before Mitchell could formulate a desperate rebuttal, the heavy glass doors of the precinct flew open with a violent crash. Martha Pendleton walked in, a striking, formidable woman in her late 50s, senior partner at one of the Midwest's most ruthless civil rights and corporate litigation firms, wearing a sharp, tailored trench coat over her evening clothes. She was not merely Noah's wife, and she did not look like a worried spouse arriving to comfort her husband. She looked like an apex predator who had just found her prey, calm and lethal, and entirely in control. Flanking her was Special Agent David Kessler of the FBI's Civil Rights Division, dressed in a dark suit, his federal badge openly displayed on a lanyard around his neck. Martha's eyes found Noah, the blood, the cuffs. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't cry. She pulled out her phone and began photographing him from every angle, flash after flash lighting the room. "Ma'am, you can't take pictures in here," a young officer started. "Try to stop me." Martha snapped without even looking at him. She turned her burning gaze on Mitchell. "Captain Robert Mitchell, I am Martha Pendleton, legal counsel for Judge Pendleton. I want names, badge numbers, and supervisor logs for every officer involved in this arrest now." "Mrs. Pendleton, we're trying to resolve." "Resolve," Kessler cut in, stepping forward, handing Mitchell a document. "Captain, the FBI is officially taking jurisdiction of this incident under Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. We are opening a federal investigation into the assault of a sitting United States federal judge." Miller shot up from his chair, hands shaking. "It was a mistake. He didn't tell me who he was. He refused to show ID." Noah turned his head slowly toward him. "I was under no legal obligation to show you identification, Officer Miller. You had no reasonable suspicion. You engaged in a retaliatory, racially motivated assault." He turned back to Mitchell, delivering the final blow. "And before your Internal Affairs Department attempts to delete Officer Miller's dash cam footage, you should know something. This assault occurred beneath Pillar 4B. 3 years ago, I signed the federal warrant authorizing the Department of Homeland Security to install 4K, audio-enabled cameras on that exact awning. That feed does not belong to the Chicago Police Department. It uploads directly to federal servers." Mitchell's face turned the color of ash. The cover-up had died before it began. "The camera saw everything, Captain," Noah said softly. "It saw him attack me, unprovoked. It heard him threaten me. It heard me comply. You have a catastrophic civil rights violation on federal tape." Martha gestured to Kessler. "Take the cuffs off my client now." Kessler unlocked the ratchets, freeing Noah's bruised, bleeding wrists. Martha knelt beside him, letting her professional mask slip just enough to touch his uninjured cheek. "I've got you, Noah," she whispered. "I've got you." Noah stood slowly, joints aching, presence towering over the room. He looked at Miller, now quietly weeping, realizing his career and freedom were gone. "Agent Kessler," Noah said, pointing a steady finger at the officer. "I want that man arrested, charged to the absolute maximum extent of federal law." By 6 the next morning, the story hadn't just leaked, it had detonated through the city's political establishment. Captain Mitchell, unslept, made frantic calls to the mayor's office, only to be met by stonewalling. The Chicago Police Department, historically entrenched in its own stubborn defense mechanisms and not yet aware the FBI already possessed the federal footage, gambled on a preemptive strike. They believed they were simply dealing with the uncorroborated word of an angry judge against the carefully tailored, unified narrative of 2 sworn patrolmen. At 8:30 a.m., Thomas Gallagher, the bulldog president of the local Fraternal Order of Police, stepped up to a hasty cluster of microphones arranged on the frosted concrete steps outside the precinct. Gallagher was a shrewd, combative man who had built his entire career defending the indefensible, relying heavily on the public's reflexive trust in the uniform. His breath plumed in the freezing morning air as he glared at the assembled reporters. Last night, Officer Darius Miller and Officer Brian Hayes were involved in a highly volatile, rapidly evolving altercation with a non-compliant, remarkably aggressive individual at O'Hare International. Gallagher barked into the cameras, his face flushed with a perfectly rehearsed mask of righteous indignation. This individual, who we later learned holds a position in the federal judiciary, refused multiple lawful orders, violently resisted standard detention procedures, and made sudden, threatening movements toward the interior pockets of his heavy coat. Officer Miller, operating under reasonable fear for his own safety and the safety of his partner, utilized standard department-approved compliance techniques to neutralize the threat. We stand by our officers. No one is above the law, not even a federal judge who thinks his title allows him to bypass airport security protocols. It was a masterclass in institutional gaslighting. Without a single flinch, Gallagher painted Noah Pendleton not as a victim of blatant racial profiling and catastrophic excessive force, but as an arrogant, entitled elitist who had practically forced a working-class hero to defend himself. Martha Pendleton watched the live broadcast of the press conference on a massive flat-screen television, 5 miles away in her expansive corner office at Harrison and Reed. She stood perfectly still, a steaming cup of black coffee warming her hands. She didn't throw anything. She didn't scream at the screen. Her expression was one of cold, terrifying calculation, the look of a litigator who has just watched the opposing counsel hand her an unforgivable gift. She listened to Gallagher spin his web of absolute fiction from beginning to end, and then she picked up her phone and dialed Special Agent David Kessler. Did you hear him?" Martha asked, her voice dangerously calm, the kind of quiet that precedes a hurricane. "I heard every word," Kessler replied from his own office at the federal building downtown, sounding equally disgusted. "They're digging their own graves." The Attorney General has been personally briefed. The Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division is taking the absolute lead on this. We're bypassing the local channels entirely. We're releasing the tape, Martha. Uncut, high definition, with the full audio. Martha took a slow sip of her coffee, her eyes locked on Gallagher's smug face frozen on the screen. "Burn them to the ground," she said softly, and terminated the call. At precisely 10 that morning, the Department of Justice bypassed local networks entirely and released the unedited DHS footage to every major national outlet. The impact was instant and catastrophic. Anchors, faces grim, warned viewers before cutting to the tape. The footage was pristine, no shaky phone camera, but a cold, cinematic 4K record of a predator in uniform acting with total impunity. The audio delivered the fatal blow. The world heard Noah's calm, measured voice explaining exactly what he was doing. They heard no aggression, no threat. And then they watched Darius Miller lunge, yank the judge's coat, and kick his legs out from under him. They heard the sickening crack of bone against pavement, followed by Miller's sneering taunt. "You going to sue me, old man? I am the law out here." Gallagher's press conference, replayed beside the footage in a split screen, exposed him instantly as an active participant in a cover-up. By noon, the mayor of Chicago held an emergency press conference, sweating under the lights, announcing Miller's immediate termination. Protests began forming downtown. By 2 that afternoon, unmarked FBI SUVs surrounded the 16th District Precinct. Agents seized computers, servers, body camera drives, and the phones of over 20 officers. What they found on Miller's encrypted phone turned a single act of brutality into a systemic scandal. In a group chat titled Night Shift Kings, Miller had texted at 11:15 p.m. the night of the assault, bagged a loudmouth at T3, thought he was special cause of his fancy coat, put his face in the dirt to teach him respect. Old man bled like a stuck pig. It wasn't a loss of temper. It was documented, celebrated malice. By nightfall, Darius Miller sat not on paid leave, but on a thin mattress in a federal holding cell, denied bail as an extreme flight risk, facing a multi-count indictment, deprivation of rights under color of law, aggravated assault, obstruction of justice. 14 months later, the Dirksen Federal Building courtroom was packed. Press, civil rights leaders, off-duty officers watching the fall of one of their own. Miller sat pale and hollowed at the defense table, his swagger long gone. Prosecutor Richard Caldwell built an airtight case, but the fatal blow came from inside Miller's own circle. Brian Hayes, facing an accessory charge, had accepted a plea deal, forfeited his badge, and agreed to testify. He saw a black man standing in nice clothes, minding his own business, and he didn't like it. Hayes told the jury, voice trembling. He called it taxing the locals. A gasp rippled through the gallery. On the 5th day, the prosecution called its final witness. The door swung open, and Noah Pendleton walked the center aisle. No robes, just a charcoal suit, leaning on a mahogany cane, a permanent souvenir of the rotator cuff damage and spinal compression from that night. The entire courtroom rose out of instinct. "I made a conscious decision not to reveal my occupation," Noah testified, his voice deep and unwavering. "Because if I had to flash a federal badge to survive an encounter with police on a public sidewalk, then the system is fundamentally broken. I wanted to see how this officer treated an ordinary citizen. I discovered, to my profound physical detriment, that he treats them like animals." Asked what he felt as Miller drove him to the ground, Noah paused, the courtroom silent enough to hear the hum of the vents. "I felt the crushing weight of history," he said. "I have spent my life devoted to the rule of law, but lying on that concrete, my title meant nothing. My education meant nothing. I was entirely stripped of my humanity, subjected to the sheer, unrestrained terror of arbitrary power. Officer Miller did not enforce the law that night. He was the lawlessness we fear in the dark." Jurors wept. The defense had nothing to attack. The video was objective. The texts were damning. The victim unshakable. After less than 3 hours, the jury returned guilty verdicts on every count. Miller collapsed into his chair, sobbing, as federal marshals moved in with chains. 2 months later, he was sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary. No possibility of early parole. The ripple effects reached further still. The Department of Justice forced the Chicago Police Department into a binding consent decree, mandating sweeping reforms in use of force training, civilian oversight, and psychological evaluation. Noah Pendleton returned to his bench. He still walks with a cane, a permanent reminder of the night the law failed him, but every time his gavel strikes, the echo lands a little sharper. He looked into the darkest corner of the system he had spent his life serving, survived it and dragged it into the light. Proof that while power can be abused, justice, armed with truth, is absolute.